Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is the head football coach of the Catholic University of America, Coach Mike Gutelius. Coach is going to talk to us about everything about his journey coaching-wise and why he ended up back at his alma mater coaching. But before we get into his story, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Catholic University of America. It's located in Washington, D.C. It's got about 2,929 students. They have an 85% acceptance rate and a 71% graduation rate. Before aid, it's $75,000 a year. After aid, it's $33,000 a year. Their three big majors are business admin and management, psychology, and, being located in D.C., poli-sci, and government. As I say every week, make sure you talk with your coaches that are recruiting you, talk to your guidance counselor, talk to the admissions people at the Catholic University of America if that's what you're interested in. And if you want more information other than the quick facts that we gave you, you can go to www.catholic.edu. With all that being said, Coach Mike's going to give us his story of his journey through his coaching career and how he ended up back at the Catholic University of America. But it's not my job to tell his story. It's his job. So without further ado, this is Coach Gutelius. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach of the Catholic University, Coach Mike Gutelius. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Carlo. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Coach, I'm going to do this the same way I do every week. I'm going to throw you in the time machine real quick. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about your days at Catholic and why you ended up there. We're going to work our way to today. So my question for you is, let's take you back to 1988. How do you end up at the Catholic University?
It's kind of funny. I actually got rejected by Catholic University when I first applied. That's where I always wanted to go. Then I went, okay, well, I was from, Westchester, New York, Westchester County. So Pace University there had a football team. And I said, well, I'll just stay local and go to Pace. Mm-hmm. So I went there and played for them for a year and then did really well in school because I was stopped being a knucklehead like I was in high school, thinking that football would be my key to go wherever I wanted, only I wasn't tall enough or good enough to to really help me. And so then I reapplied to Catholic and got in the next time around. And so the transfer down in there because I had taken a visit to Catholic my senior year, and I thought, wow, this was like in DC, the type of school I really wanted to go to, and I was going to major in politics, so there was like not a better place on the planet, and for me being a Catholic guy, it was just a real fit. So when I got rejected, I was kind of crushed. But I remember having sitting down with my dad. My dad's like, the typical father, you reap what you sow, son. And so I had to go show them I could handle some academics before they let me in.
Now, and just for those out there that are listening, this is pre-transfer portal. We're not you're not just plopping your name into a hat and all the coaches can see you. So you graduate in 1992?
Yes.
And then when your time at Catholic's done as a player, you stay on and coach 92 to 93. Now, my question for you is, was it difficult going from being the guy that shoulder pads, helmet, locker room with your guys to being the guy that's up in the coach's office, clipboard, visor, khaki pants? What was the biggest transition for you and how did you manage that?
It's a big transition. You have to flip that switch of instead of just saying, let me just show you how to do that, or you're like, how do I use my words and demonstrate and get someone to perform the action I want them to perform in the manner I want it done. And, when you're a player, you have that luxury, essentially a luxury to be like, I'm just going to go do it and I can get it done. And as a coach, it's not so much what you can do or what you can do or what you can think it's what can I get my guys to do? And so that was a big switch for me. I had a little bit of a transition point in it though, because my senior year was really a very frustrating one playing wise. I broke my ankle in the first quarter of the first game senior year. And so I kind of got into coaching because with a cast on, I wanted to still be around it. I went up in the press box and I realized I had a good vision for what was going on, and I was able to give feedback to the coaches and help. And so, that was kind of like my withdrawal program was to, because football playing was done. And so I had to come up with something. So coaching was where I started. But when I realized I wasn't bad at it and I thought I could do it, then I started saying, well, wait a minute, is this something I can do?
Now,
and actually make a living.
Do you take a break from your time when you go to Catholic to your time to when you end up at St. Norbert College, or?
So I coached at Georgetown Prep in that interim. So
okay.
I was a freshman coach at Georgetown Prep, and for Mr. Fagan, who was a legendary coach there, he had some crazy winning streaks. I think one was like 27 games in a row or something. I mean, this was, the guy's still alive, but he's and he still helps out at Prep, and he was well into his 90s, but he was an incredible coach. So I worked for him for a couple years. I thought maybe I wanted to teach in high school and coach there. And after being back in high school, I said, no, I really, really would rather not be around these guys. No offense to high school young men, but
it's a different breed. They're a different. They're still learning, and there's still just a different mentality when you're dealing with the high school kid versus a college kid.
And God bless the high school coaches who find ways to motivate these guys nowadays. There's so many distractions. I mean, there's always been some, but my gosh, there's so many other things for these guys to get into.
Now, after your time at Prep, why was St. Norbert the next place for you?
It's funny. So the guy who had been one of the years, he was O-line coach and then eventually became defensive coordinator at Catholic. When he had moved on to become offensive or O-line coach or offensive coordinator, I can't remember which, at St. Norbert College, and they were looking for someone to hire out there. And he called me up and while I was at Prep, and he's like, hey, do you want to get back into college coaching? And I really hadn't felt like I'd been in it, but I guess I was. And I definitely wanted to get out of high school coaching. And he said, will you move essentially to Green Bay, Wisconsin, for $1,200 a year? And I said, sure. When you're not married, and you're a young guy and you basically can live out of your car for a little bit, you take chances. And I had a friend, in full disclosure, I was working almost full-time as a bar manager and a bartender in DC at one of the more popular places. And while I was coaching and trying to get into teaching, and one of the guys I talked to, I was kind of bouncing around like, I don't know if I want to get $1,200. I'm moving all the way to the Midwest. And he looked at me and he said, when you're 45, do you want to be on the sidelines or standing behind the bar? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. That really brought it home. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, yep, I'm going to take a leap of faith and just go for it.
Now, when your time comes, because you spent three seasons there.
Yep.
Three full seasons, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I see you got your master's from the next place that your next stop as you were going through your coaching journey. Was that a factor in why you went to and I want to make sure Laverne?
Yeah, University of Laverne, where Don Morell was the head coach. Don knew the head coach I was working for at St. Norbert College, which was Greg Quick. And there was an unfortunate situation developed at St. Norbert for Coach Quick. We were 5-5, and they decided it was time to make a change. And he had a couple good winning seasons. And Division III, when you're 5-5, you don't expect to get let go. But I think he might have stepped on some people's toes. And they kind of wanted me to stay, but I was realizing that if I was going to stay in coaching, getting my master's was probably the right thing to do next. And Coach Quick knew Don Morell out at University of Laverne. And after being in Green Bay for a while, Southern California sounded pretty good. So, the funny thing is, by this point, I was my wife and I were engaged at this point, and she had just moved to Green Bay, had gotten an apartment, and I'm at the University of Laverne, on my way to University of Laverne, and she still has 4 months on her lease, and I'm leaving her in the dead of winter in Wisconsin, and I'm moving to sunny Southern California, and then to make matters worse, like the day I leave, the day I'm gone, I had owed a few tax dollars to the state of Maryland when I left. they found me in Wisconsin, and she gets a certified letter saying your soon-to-be husband owes the state of Maryland $1,200 or something. And yeah, just imagine, I mean, the thoughts running through her head were like, what am I doing?
Well, and the sell would have been real easy. Like, listen, Wisconsin's not going to work out, but we're on our way to Southern California. The difference is you got to wait 4 months because I don't want you. It's hard to get out of the lease.
In theory, she was on board when we mapped it out, and then when she realized she wasn't getting out of her lease, and but that was an awesome time in Wisconsin. I loved Green Bay, and St. Norbert was great. De Pere is such a storied place because that's where the Packers go, stay for their preseason. And they're still working out at Lambeau and stuff, but man, it's all right there. And the joke is, if you ever want to go grocery shopping and only take 10 minutes in the store, you go on Sunday afternoon when the Packers are playing, because there's nobody there.
Nobody there.
And yeah, I mean, and the stadium there holds about the same number of people as live in Green Bay proper, so okay. The population of the city essentially doubles on game day.
Now, what would you say, since, coming from the East Coast and then going to the Midwest, what would you say the biggest difference is in their style of football versus what the East Coast plays?
At that time, I would say the East Coast, and it's funny, it's sort of swung back to this. The East Coast defensively was doing a lot of 3-man fronts, and a lot of odd stuff. And West Coast was almost Midwest was almost entirely a 4-3, scheme. 4-2-5 wasn't really around, was just coming into being really. And, 4-4 was still there, but it wasn't as adaptable as a 4-3 scheme was. So there was a lot of 4-down defenses. And then I think the running game in the Midwest was still very, 21 personnel focused, and a little more of a power game. And the East Coast was starting to get into more one-back stuff. I think maybe a hair earlier, but I don't think it was like a seismic shift. I think it was sort of that way across the country.
Makes sense. So Coach, you get your master's from Laverne. Why the choice to then move on to Wingate?
So my wife and I, we get married and we're in Southern California. And so I'm finishing my master's, and she and I both realized that part of the country wasn't really where we wanted to be. And Laverne, I was going to have to look for a full-time job at some of the, schools in Southern California if we want to stay there. And there's really not that much small college football. So it was, I looked at a couple of GAs positions, because that was the next thing, was go back and, take a GA at a Division I school and see if you can't jump on and try and make the move up.
Yeah.
But I had one of my youngest brother was living in North Carolina, and he was living in a neighborhood in Monroe, which is just west of Wingate, between there and Charlotte. And a new guy had moved in next to him, who was Joe Reich, who was becoming the head coach at Wingate. And my brother Tom goes over to his door and knocks on his door. My brother Tom there's never ex-Marine. Was no longer active Marine. And he's an impressive guy. Like he's only about 5'10", but he's probably 250 pounds of all chest and arms. And so he knocks, and he had a nasty beard at the time and like a weird haircut, and he's got these tattoos all over. And he knocks on Coach Reich's door, and he goes, "Here's a resume of a guy you need to look at," like at his house, just accosting this football coach. And
how do you say no to a Marine? You know what I mean? Like at that point, you're just like,
"Thank you very much, and thank you for your service," and like close the door. But and then I was so lucky that it worked out with Coach Reich, because he was a fantastic head coach to work for. I mean, really put a lot of so many good qualities together. And then it was really a magical staff. Like Rashawn Jordan, who's now the head coach, who just took over at Wingate, was the defensive coordinator. I was working directly under him. The offensive coordinator is a guy, Mike Long, who's been there since that time.
Yeah.
But family man. I mean, and the staff was great, and the guys we recruited were just great. And he's turned the program into a pretty strong, perennial contender down there. And yeah, that was a fun time. But I knew I couldn't stay there, because Rashawn wasn't really going anywhere and he was Coach Reich's guy. And if I wanted to move up on the defensive side of the ball, I had to find my next stop.
One, I think that's a good spot to ask you. You know, that's got to be a thought for a lot of coaches, right? As you're coming up the ladder, you got to look not only at what you want per se, but the person that's in front of you, the coordinator, the head coach. Where are they in their life? Where are they in their careers? Is there a path to move up? And I think a lot of the times that's where you get some of your position coaches end up going to other places. Yeah. You find yourself for the next 5 years at Concord University, but it's in West Virginia, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Concord. Yep. It's in that West Virginia conference, which now they call the Mountain East. And funny enough, the coach I went to work for there, Greg Quick, he had been the head coach at St. Norbert, so I got to go back and work for him again, which was an awesome setup. It was just really Concord. We had year 2 of our staff there. We were turning it around, and then there was a shakeup in the athletic department, and they named Coach Quick the AD. And they didn't really give us a lot of other support, so it was kind of like the department gained a great AD, but we lost a lot of football juice, you know? And so we struggled. I don't think we were really set up for success. And we had a hard time there. I mean, listen, we did a great job. We had some big upset wins here and there, but you know, you'd have to do stuff like we went and played Western Kentucky University for a money game, you know, and Liberty University for a money game. And we went to play Delaware State for a money game. And that was the first time I'd seen that, you know, run pass option stuff. And I'm the defensive coordinator, and they've got this quarterback who was 6'5", 205 pounds, could run like the wind, could throw the ball. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my D end from down in the holler is not going to go get that guy.
No, he's not.
And so we took our lumps. Yeah, and you had to do that each, and of course Shepherd was in the conference at the time, and that was the cream of the crop. And Fairmont State was really good up and down. I mean, there was some big time coaches to come out of there during that conference.
Now, so you spend 5 years there, and then the next stop is Lindsey Wilson, which you're part of the restart after a 75-year hiatus. What is that like? Because that's 75 years of not having football, and then restarting a program and trying to get people like, hey, we're back. We're trying to. That's got to be a tough excursion.
It was something. It was like a thrilling thing to do, and I never ever want to be a part of a startup again.
Best time you never want to have again.
Exactly. I suppose someone could talk me into it somehow, but man, little thing. And Coach Oliver, who was the head coach there, did a fantastic job of like weaving it all together. And we kind of caught lightning in the bottle. And within 5 years, we found ourselves in the quarterfinals of the national playoffs, but the school was excellent athletic wise. They really appreciated how top-notch athletics added to this, to educational experience. There's the men's soccer team at the time had like 9 national championships. Women's soccer won some. Basketball was very successful. It was, and so they thought they would, we'd start football and it'd be good. And we got good fast, but things like you didn't know that they don't know, like the drawings for the stadium, which they built a beautiful, like nice stadium in the side of a hill. And it was gorgeous, great locker rooms. But on the drawings, there was no crow's nest or filming area, and they they had built a stadium that that had a press box and then nothing like above to film. And so we're like, well, we're going to need some place to film for cameras, and you need to adjust it. And the guy with the drawings kind of was like, well, we could put a little, camera on the edge here over on the side, sort of like a security camera. Didn't really understand the amount of videoing that's going to go on a football field. So they adjusted it. They did, because that was great, was that they were open to, what do we need? And they were only going to build one. They weren't going to redo the stadium right away. So fortunately they listened, but it was an incredible experience. I mean, they didn't have a football on campus. And,
so when you say you guys restarted from the ground up, you really restarted pylon, football, the whole nine.
Yeah, the whole thing. And I think I like the way that Lindsey Wilson did it, in that we brought in a class. We didn't practice that fall. We just lifted with that group. And as coaches, we were just every Friday night trying to hit 2 or 3 football games, recruiting our tails off, doing all that. Because a lot of schools, what they'll do is they'll come in and practice when they start up, they'll practice and they'll play scrimmages or games like sort of almost as a JV program that fall and then go into the spring. We decided we weren't going to do that. We wouldn't start practicing till the spring. And I felt that was actually helpful because we got to know the guys at a much higher level of who we thought could help. And then going into the next year, that next class coming in. So we had really 2 years of recruiting before
you hit the ground running type thing. Okay. And then that's just for clarification, that is an NAIA school?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's NAIA partial scholarship. And, the difference between NAIA and Division II is not much, even though the NAIA technically has less number of full scholarships or, amount of money to break up, but you can stretch your dollar farther in some weird ways compared to Division II. Like in the NAIA, the only scholarship that counts against your cap, your limit, is anyone who plays in a game. So essentially, if you redshirt somebody on scholarship, that money doesn't count against your limit. So there's some really funny idiosyncrasies that develop in NAI football. Like, we were beating the brakes off of somebody. I can't remember who it was, but we're up 50 points and it's early in the season, like week 2 or something. And parents in the stands are like, put Timmy in. Well, I can't put Timmy in on the second season because I don't anticipate him playing the rest of the year. And as soon as I put him on the field, his money counts against our cap.
Yeah.
And so
Timmy's going to have to wait.
Timmy's got to wait. And that means daddy's got to wait. And that makes some very upset people. So there's some weird idiosyncrasies that come with NAI. But I enjoyed NAI, Coach. I think as an association, I think they have their values right. I think they're, I think they're somewhat, even though maybe it's not as vocal about it, but they're Christian based really in essentially how they do things. And they don't get sort of swept up, at least when I was in it. I can't speak for it now, but it didn't seem like they got swept up in the cause of the moment. And they were much more about, we are doing athletics to develop young people to be better people. And and that's what I enjoyed about it. Now when I was in it, NAIA had sort of buckled down compared to what it had been, say, 15 years before, where it was a little bit more the Wild West, where, there wasn't really, like, you could take a guy that might have played, gotten kicked out of 3 institutions, but he'd come to your place and be eligible to play. And so they tightened up the rules. They actually they had a clearinghouse by that point, and eligibility rules that were a little more, really only the difference was rather than having just test scores and GPAs for eligibility, they had class rank thrown in. So you had to hit 2 out of the 3. So if a person was a great student but a terrible test taker, they could still be eligible right away in the NAI.
Yeah, instead of they got nervous for their ACT or their SAT. You don't have to necessarily, that's not the sinking ship.
Right. As long as they had, a high enough GPA and they were in the top half of their class, or I can't remember exactly now the percentage it'd be, but if they were a really good student, they were eligible.
And then now we get to the meat of it.
Right.
In 2017, why was it time to come home and become the 30th head coach of the Catholic University?
Well, I had applied 2 other times along the way when the position had been open, and the timing really worked out on this one to be right. And Sean Sullivan, who was the AD at the time, he's actually up at Salve Regina now. But Sean, I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he probably was a little hesitant at first when people were recommending me, because he's looking at this coaching in the NAIA, which is still sort of considered the wild, wild west of small college football. And that, Catholic U doesn't lean that way. We're pretty buttoned up. And so it took a few people calling on my behalf. Then going through the interview process, I told my wife, I said, because you know how it is, you're a small college coach, you're trying to climb the ladder. And I can't tell you the number of, FCS jobs I'd applied for, or, tried to get my foot in the door at an FBS school. And really, analysts were just starting to become a thing. And I'm like, gosh, do I want to take a step back off the field and be an analyst just to get my foot in the door, and other bigger schools? And she and I talked about it, and we're like, no, you know what? Like, I love developing young men. I love that part of it. And looking at the way the world is getting crazier and crazier, I said, you know what, let's try and go back home to Catholic U. She's from Ohio, but I met her when she was working in DC when I met her. So I had met her my first go around in Catholic. I was actually working at Georgetown Prep then. But so we came back here to really turn the program around. And they, I won't say it was in a terrible spot, but they had like 3 years in a row where they'd only won 3 games.
Yeah.
And so I, heck, I just been on a staff. We built football from scratch. I thought, well, this is easy. I'm going to fly into this place that has great tradition. Orange Bowl back in 1935, Sun Bowl in 1940, 3 years of the playoffs in the late 90s. I'm like, I'm going to roll in there and my magic's going to turn this thing around. And we, the first year we went 5-5. You would have thought we won the Super Bowl. But I knew after being here for like, coaching about 7 months here, I was like, this is going to be a little bit more of a slog. That first year we had 20 seniors that all listened. They were just craving leadership.
Yeah.
And they soaked it up and they busted their butts and we won 5 games and surprised some people. I mean, we beat Utica that year. That's a big win. Randolph-Macon,
yeah,
we beat that. Like, so we snuck up on some people because we had a few guys and we put some schemes together. But the next year there was going to be about 7 seniors. So there was like 7 in the junior class and there was about 6 in the sophomore class. And then the freshman class that I had sort of finished off recruiting, we had about 25 or 26 guys.
Yeah.
So we needed a huge freshman class coming in the next year. And the next year we went, 1-9. And then the year after that, we went 2-8. The 2-8 year, we should have been 4-6. There was 2 games we let get away, but we weren't any better than that. And then it's, 2020 and I felt like we were ready to go. And then we had that fall season stolen from us. So
I got to ask you, being in DC specifically, what was the environment like? Because we've talked to all the other coaches. There's coaches that were in the process of recreating a program and then another opportunity came and this opportunity went away. But being in the epicenter of where all the decisions are being made and all that, what was it like for you guys?
It's funny because, DC is the place, but it turned into a ghost town. There was just no one here. And of course, yes, the government's running through DC and all that's still going on, but so much of that was being done remotely. You could have walked across the mall down there, the National Mall, and not seen 5 people. It was a really weird thing. It felt kind of like The Walking Dead. You're just walking around and you're waiting for something to come around the corner. And then as we started coming out of it, that summer of 2020 obviously was one of turmoil and unrest. And, I just think it was a tough time. A lot of people were, had things boiling up inside of them that I'm not sure that the triggers that brought it out matched up with their feelings, but they wanted to do something. And so we had a lot of boiling over in DC, that's for sure. But it was an interesting time to be here.
Now, so the 2020 season gets taken from you. And since then, no losing seasons, 3 straight years of at least 500 ball.
Yep.
Last year, 5-5 overall, 3-3 in the conference, inaugural year for the Landmark Conference. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the 2023 season and why the move to the Landmark, what it was like being in a new conference, and how your overall opinion on the season.
Yeah. Well, let me start there. Overall opinion on the season. I'm glad we finished strong, but we really underachieved in the middle.
Okay.
And there was reasons for it. There was injuries. There was just that. But you know what? Like, welcome to college football. I mean, and I didn't do my best job coaching this past year. I'm open about saying that. And I think some of our good players underachieved. And there was some other challenges internally that I don't want to go into. But, we came out the other end because, our third to last game, we're up at Keystone in, above Scranton. And we were down at halftime and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we got 2 wins. Like, am I going to be, 2-8? Is this, am I going to be driving semis after the season? I'm going to be out. And the guys just took it in their hands and they just came out after halftime and they went out and won it. And from then on, they were like, that's it. We're just going to go win ball games. And so we won the last 3 down the stretch. which was great. And it was a positive way to finish, but it also was tremendously frustrating because I saw how good we could have been.
Yeah.
You know, were we going to beat Susquehanna? No, we would have had to play a perfect game. You know, Susquehanna's in the league. They're tough. They were the only ones to beat SUNY Cortland last year.
Yes, they were.
And, you know, it's a good football program.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it's a tough league. I mean, Wilkes is no pushover, Lycoming, Moravian, you know, Susquehanna. These schools all have football tradition. And it was an interesting conference to step into, the way it got pulled together, because the Landmark had been around for a while, but they didn't sponsor football.
Yeah.
Because there weren't that many football playing schools in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
The NCAA changes the rule to drop it down to you need 6 football playing schools to get an automatic bid. The conference decides now is the time. We invite Wilkes and Lycoming to join our conference, which they did. And then Keystone came in as football only. And so now we have, you know, 7 teams that were in the conference. And that's kind of how it came together. But the subsequent thing of that was we were in the NEWMAC prior to that, and we get pulled from there. So the travel's a little better. I'd rather, you know, if Scranton is the farthest trip on a Friday, that's better than going up to play Norwich in Vermont, you know, which is,
or Curry in Boston, or
yeah, my gosh, you know, we were up to MIT, because then you have to drive through New York on a Friday afternoon, and
no thanks.
Connecticut, which, you pick your poison. It's just, you know, I mean, at least the food would be good. We get good Italian food on a Friday night, but geez, oh flip, the travel stunk. But that was kind of a cool conference, because you had, you got Merchant Marine, Coast Guard Academy, so those schools kind of have a cool niche. You know, it's a neat thing, and you got MIT and WPI, 2 top engineering schools. You know, MIT is a cool place to play, although the people, their locker room where you change, and I hope nobody at MIT gets mad at me, but so you change, they put you in a locker room that's near a squash court. You've got these professors who probably are the top in their field, whatever, walking through with their squash rackets while your guys are getting dressed. And, you know, I got some guy from South Philly beating his head against the locker trying to get ready to go, and the math
professor's walking through.
Yeah, some math professor
sir,
coming through with a squash racket, and it's a weird field, but you know, it was kind of a cool conference. So I won't say I was sad to leave, but there are things I miss about it. But then you go into, you know, this conference with the schools we're in now, the Landmark in Pennsylvania, and man, that's football country. You know, this is, I would say that we had to get ready for a tougher run game. We had to get ready for some more physical play. The linemen are a little bigger. Now, Springfield was in the NEWMAC, and of course, you know, they're the best triple option team in the country. They lead the country in rushing pretty much every year. You know, so they're going to get you. But these other teams were physical in a different way. So we've had to look at, you know, what schematically do we need to do in recruiting wise? How do we need to get bigger and stronger, and sort of change, adapt to what we're seeing, as opposed to a little more, you know, in the NEWMAC, it was a little more wide open, a little more, you know, chucking it around the yard.
Now, Coach, it's interesting you bring up recruitment. Can you put us as a fly on the wall with parents and a player, other than the fact that the guy got to be able to play ball? What are we looking for?
Right.
What are we looking for, for a player? And what are you telling the parents? Like, hey, next 4 years, I got your son. We're gonna take him into being an adult and make him a better man than he was when he came in. How does that conversation go?
Yeah, I love those conversations, because, well, they're hard, because at a place like Catholic University, it always comes back to, you know, Coach, this is a really expensive place for me to send my son. And yeah, it is. Like any, I think, top Division III schools, especially any that are in a city, are going to have some higher costs that make it tough. But, you know, man, I'm convinced on it's worth it. And obviously I'm biased, but when I sit down with the mom and dad, usually, you know, or the family and the player, and we're in my office and we're talking about what the future holds, you know, I kind of put it back on them and say, you can have as much of it as you want at a place like this. Like, I mean, you can't have it all anywhere. You can't.
Yeah.
Man, you can get close to having it all here, because just even the physicality of our campus. I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's over 170 acres in Washington, D.C. And so it feels like you could be in central Pennsylvania. It's so open and trees and space. But we're 3 metro stops from Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
And then we have a metro station on campus. And so, you kind of running through that. And so players can have as much or as little DC as they want. And I always think that DC is sort of it's a cheater city in that you get everything in the world here, but it's not like living in Manhattan or Atlanta or, Dallas or LA. It's just not as big on top. Now it's all spread out around you, but the district itself is a much more controlled environment because of the way it's set up to be, but everything has to be here, so we usually wind up talking about internship opportunities, so if a guy's interested in criminology, I'm like, oh, well, you can intern with the FBI, or he's interested in aeronautical engineering or mechanical engineering. I'm like, oh, well, how about you intern with NASA or biology?
And they're all, you take your pick, whatever your major is. If you're going into that field, there's no better place to be. Like,
the biology major is interning at NIH. I mean, it's just it's awesome, and we have that's one of the top things that I think really clinches it for families is they're like, yeah, because I could have 2 internships while I'm there. And that's the key is how do you set yourself apart once you graduate? And so that's sort of the academic side. And it's a, phenomenal academic school. Like the number of, I came here for studying politics, which thank goodness I didn't go into. I was actually specializing in national defense strategies and really was concentrating on the Cold War, which tells you how long ago it was. But while I was here, the Berlin Wall comes down and the Soviet Union ceases to exist. So everything that was current events now became history. So it turns
that
out
was the end of that.
Football was a much better choice. But I go on to say all that to say that there's not as many politics majors here as there was. No. And really, it's not as a super attractive type of career as I think it used to be, 35 years ago. But we have a business school that's off the charts. We have a nursing school that's off the charts. We have this engineering school. We have architecture. We have all of these things that are right here. And so to offer that internship opportunity that goes with it is really usually how we close the deal on kids that they're looking at us and 5 other schools and they go, yeah, but if I go there, the internship is a metro stop away as opposed to me having to take a semester somewhere else to do my internship. So if you're going to school in Western New York and you want an internship with somebody where you're gonna have to go to New York City, to Philadelphia, to DC, to Cleveland or something, we're already here. So, and then, to me, the final thing when I'm sitting with families is we are the Catholic University of America. And now, while we're not beating anybody in the head with Bibles or, we're not saying a bunch of holy rollers, there is a definite understanding about what it means to be a human being at this place. And it's clear and it runs through the place. It's just a steady undercurrent that because you're a child of God, you have value based on that he loves you, not on who you are or what you do. And when you come at things starting from there, I think that can really iron out a lot of the wrinkles that we see popping up on college campuses.
I think that's the fact that there's no qualms about it. There's no shyness about it. This is who we are. And this is why you're coming here. One of the reasons you're coming here. It's not the overarching reason. So Coach, I have a couple questions more just about the state of Division III football and college football as a whole. Some big news in the last couple of weeks. We're moving to 40 teams in the playoff system. We're moving to iPads on the sidelines, which I don't know where that came from. I had a guy reach out to me and tell me like, hey, this is going on. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. And I started doing the research and was like, why are we not talking about this? Why are we waiting for this to pass? And some shakeups conference wise, John Carroll out of the OAC, Hiram moving over to the PAC here in a couple of years, or in next year, I believe. First and foremost, the 40 team playoff. Is it the right time? Was that the right number?
Yeah, I think so. If you ask me, I would have loved to see, 48 teams, but the ratio, if you look across sports, that puts us closer to what they, the acceptable ratio of participants versus playoff bids.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the huge reluctant parts of it was the timing of it all, and like when will the playoffs end? When will the championship game be, and all that. And I think as people started looking at, and to me, it's really since post-COVID, you look at like we can adjust things and the planet doesn't like fall apart. We can make adjustments. And in the end, it's really going to only affect 2 teams that are going to have that extra week. But to offer that, because, as you know, you have what, 4 or 5 at-large bids, so.
Well, this past season, I mean, the big question mark was you had 29 automatic or AQs, the automatic qualifiers.
Mm-hmm.
The number 4 team in the country becomes an at-large bid. The number 1 team in the country at the time, Portland made a statement in the Stag Bowl, but the number 1 team in the country at the time is going on the road.
Yes.
Even locally, Grove City's going on the road to Susquehanna and Portland, and Grove City's the undefeated team. So there was a lot of floating around there where it didn't seem to make sense. I think 40, at least for right now, seems to give us, it eliminates a little bit more of that thin line of, well, why did this team not get in, as opposed to, I'm not sure on the pairwise system. I have to look into it a little bit more on how they're going to, because I thought the strength of schedule and all that was kind of a factor, but it seems like we've punished some schools if they choose to, maybe they can't get a Division I school or a Division III school. So they go and they scrimmage or they play a non-conference game against a Division II or.
Yeah, no, that it can really hurt you if you drop below a certain number. And for some teams, that's like you're saying, even just 1 game against a non-division opponent can hurt you because you can't count that game, win or lose, and you don't count their opponents and their opponents' opponents. But I think, with 40 teams and the way they're going to select it, I believe there's going to be a more technology used in a system than having the committees, the regional committees rank them.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, that's gonna change. And I, part of me likes that because you can fix some things. But the man that watched Terminator as a young boy, he gets a little bit worried about Skynet messing it up, and with all this AI.
Too much AI. We're gonna teach this thing too much.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but that could just be because I'm over 50 now. I don't know.
Now, Coach, on the iPad question, where do you fall with that? Is that good for Division III? Because that starts to get us out of the realm of Division III being the purest side of college football. No scholarships. We're not. How do you get everybody on the same page to record the same way? And so where do you fall?
So I'm in favor of technology that helps us develop better football and make the guys play better.
Mm-hmm.
I think the iPads can help that. But when you look at what the rule allows of up to 18 tablets per team, that's a lot,
and are you gonna, like, they expect you as the head coach? You're most, I guess you spend most of your time in the white box. You're not you're not going to be checking the iPad.
I'm not checking it. No, I barely have enough time keeping myself from throwing up on the sidelines, let alone trying to review a bad play again or something. But but it's going to happen, and the technology's there. I don't think we can bury our head in the sand. Now, you're right. In our division, it's hard. We can't just. I can't anyway. I can't just call up a booster and say, hey, we're going to need another 24,000 this year for our tablets.
No.
For the sideline, and that's at some point it can become prohibitive. And with, us being Division III schools, generally being tuition-driven institutions, and with looking at, the way some, schools are closing and it's tighter things. So it's harder to say, well, we're just going to give football another 15,000 this year for the technology upgrade.
Right. And it's not, you mentioned the tablets. What about the cameras? What about the person that's going to have to be, that becomes a whole new position of who's going to film, who's going to do the editing.
We're actually talking about that now, about we're going to have to hire someone, even if it's part-time. You know, in the past, I'm sure, I apologize to some of our opponents, you know, when I had the guy who had twisted his ankle the week before filming, who did a terrible, you know, was missing plays or, you know, focusing the camera on something in the stands instead of on the field.
It wasn't football.
It wasn't football, you know. I apologize to my opponents for that, but that was the way you got by. For in the future, that can't happen. If I'm going to need a tablet and I'm going to have a dedicated person to that, so I have to find who that person is and how are we going to do it, and then, you know, what system are we going to use, and you know, Huddle has all the answers for it for a price,
but they're not compatible.
Yeah,
they're not the accepted. As of right now, they're not the accepted. They're not going to be. I believe it's. And I had it. We had the guy on, and he told us there's two specific companies that kind of fall in this realm of this is what they do. They do it for the NFL.
Right.
And they're going to be the ones that roll it out. Now, that doesn't mean that 2 years down the road, Huddle doesn't become part of that. I think you run into the problem of how do you mandate that people aren't going back and looking at old film as opposed to it's got to be the film that's going on right this moment. Huddle, you can almost practice film. You could open whatever you want.
Yeah, so, it's not a closed system. Like you could pull anything up on that.
Yeah. And I think that's where the next little speed bump for this technology is going to run. On that same, we talked about Division III. You've spent a lot of time in Division III. My question for you is, what is the significance of Division III? And we touched on a couple of things, that pure side of the sport, no scholarships. You're coming to because you want to play. But for you, what's the significance of the level?
Yeah, I really think that. So, you know, it is not the same level of football as what you see at, you know, in the Big Ten or the SEC or anything like that, obviously. But man, Division III football is really good. You know, it's really good. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, well, all of the guys playing Division III football chose it because you could be a pure student athlete. No, I think, you know, 95% of the football players Division III chose it because they weren't offered a scholarship at a place they wanted to go to. You know,
probably true.
Some of them were offered maybe scholarships at some places, but they're like, that's not the school I'm looking for. You know, generally speaking, Division III players are higher academic kids who are not as physically talented as the guys that are playing at bigger schools. With that being said, there is, I think, a longevity for this division as we see the craziness of what's happening in that college athletics. You know, Division III was designed for this to be purely student athlete, and we're still that way now. Yes, can our guys get NIL deals? Yeah. Do some of our guys have some weird things set up? Yeah, but they're not. I mean, I pretty much guarantee there's not going to be a 6-figure NIL deal this year at Catholic University.
And you're not calling a booster saying, hey, we really like this wide receiver. Can we throw him the Catholic University NIL deal? Like, that's not out there.
No, it's not, you know, and, you know, and guys that have coached for me or coached with me that are at Power 5 schools, to hear the horror stories of the amount of money that is going to young men, and sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes it isn't. And like it's the things that were said quietly behind closed doors before now are wide open, and the bag of money is now put on the table in front of somebody. And one of my buddies who's at a Power 5 school put it best. He said, "Nobody wants to come tour our facilities anymore until they hear what they might get."
What's the number? What's the number?
And when they hear the number, then they're either in or out. Now they want to walk around and look. And so we don't have that. You know, you come to the Catholic University of America because you want to get your engineering degree and have a great internship and hopefully play some championship football. And your payday is going to come later. And I think in my mind, that's Division III. So we've got some longevity with that. I think we can stand, you know, not to get on my high horse, believe me, if I was able to cash in on it, I would, you know, but there is a certain purity in what we're doing. And I think we get kids who want to play football because they love football. You know, I've known several guys that have taken scholarships and they're stuck at some place and they're like, I'm not even looking at transferring. I don't want to piss anybody off, lose my scholarship. I just need to ride this out so I can get my degree. And they don't even like what they're doing anymore.
It's almost become the hostage army as opposed to
exactly. Yeah.
Division III being the volunteer army, and
there
Division I guys are kind of stuck there. They're handcuffed into what they sign their name on a piece of paper, and now there's expectations that come with that.
Yeah, and for good or for bad, I have guys who can walk away whenever they want, and their financial aid package doesn't change. No, and it's that way for a reason. You know, and there's some of those guys walk away, and I go, oh my God, you know, and then there's other guys who walk away, and you're like, that was probably the right move.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what that's what Division III kind of gives that opportunity. You can get a guy that, I don't know if I want to play football. Well, you kind of already know that guy in his mind, he probably is not going to make it 4 years if he's already starting to second guess, like, do I really want to do it anymore? And then on the other side of that, you get a lot of players that realize after these 4 years, minus the COVID years and all the extra whatevers, after these 4 years, I'm like a basketball player, a soccer player, a baseball player. This is it. I don't get to put pads on again. I don't get to put a helmet on again. I can never I'd go play flag football and feel, you know, be sore and hurt in places that I didn't think I was supposed to hurt in, but I'm not going out there and tackling anybody, and I'm not volunteering to go out and tackle anybody anymore.
No.
So Coach, this is my favorite part of the show. It's 5 random questions. They have nothing to do with football. They're just to get to know you.
Okay.
So if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
I've lived around the United States a good bit. Never did the Northwest or the Texas yet. But I think I think maybe the shore in North Carolina would probably be, you know, either Outer Banks or even a little further south. There's a crazy little vacation spot called Bald Head Island down in North Carolina where it's pretty close to paradise.
Okay. I'll have to, when I get vacation time, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. Bald Head Island's really cool. You have to take a ferry to it, and there's you don't have cars, just golf carts on the island, and it's fun. So you know, when I had younger kids, was fortunate enough to be able to go there once or twice, and you just let them take their bikes and say, all right, I'll see you at dinner time. And I didn't have to worry about them getting run over. And I said, don't go in the water without an adult there. But other than that, see you at dinner.
So it's really like stepping back into the 70s and the 80s where it's don't come home till the streetlights come on.
Yeah, exactly. And you didn't have to, you know, you're free to have your day.
Yeah. Okay. What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career?
For me personally, I think my most important lesson was to enjoy the kids, enjoy the players. When I first started out, I thought I've just got to get these guys I wanted them to be robots and just do it, you know, do what I tell you. And actually at a clinic, I heard Larry Karras say it one time. He said he wished he had enjoyed the players more earlier. And I was like, what? You know, this was, I don't know, this was 97 or 98 or something. And I was like, what are you talking about? And now I look back, I know exactly what he's talking about. I love being around the guys. I love being around the team. I enjoy being around them. I've worked really hard to recruit the right young men that I want to be around. I've coached teams where you're just like, ooh, man, I can't wait to get out of the office today. One more knucklehead comes through my door who didn't go to English class and I'm going to lose it. But I love being around the guys. I think that's the favorite part.
If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't coaching, I would either be a stonemason, or involved in some kind of motivational speaking or something like that. Probably, you know, I'd be trying to be John Maxwell.
What's the best compliment that you've ever received? This is a 2-part question. I bet you can guess the other part.
Yeah. I don't know. Best compliment. Let me think about that for a quick sec. Best compliment. I think I think the best comment I ever got was when I did what was the right thing to do. The person that was involved in it said, "I knew you would do that." And it was a really hard thing to do. But it was the right thing to do. Would have been easy to look the other way and do the other thing. And when they said, "I knew you would do that," that was probably the best compliment I've ever gotten.
On the other side of compliments, what's the best insult you've ever received?
Yeah.
It's a family show, so let's keep it.
No, I think, oh man, I don't know. I guess, maybe honestly, my mom, God rest her soul, she had a way of just destroying you with like, "Oh, I thought you were better than that," and there was nothing, growing up a Catholic kid, you're like, "No, Mom,
there's nothing worse."
She's like, "I thought you were a good kid, but I guess I was wrong." And you're like, "No, just you're 11 years old and 10 years old, and if your mom turns her back on you, you feel like, it's worse than Paulie and Goodfellas when he hands the money and turns his back and says, "Now I don't know you."
Yep. Now you're done with me. I don't know you anymore.
Done.
Yep. Coach, the last question we ask every coach this: was there a question that you were expecting today, and if so, how would you have answered it?
Yeah. Well, I was expecting. I took a quick peek at some of your other episodes and was checking out. So I was expecting sort of the run through of my career. And so, I wanted to make sure that I can, my poor assistants, they hear my stories all the time. And sometimes they're getting repeated. And, I wanted to make sure that I didn't go too long or let too much out about it. But, I think coaches have a tendency, this is a funny thing. So we ever talk to a coach who will say, "Well, we did this way, or we did this, we did," going back to other spots. We tend to like get our identity from the staffs we've worked on and get stuff from that. And so it's really, you have to work really hard when I bring new guys in and I'm training them to not say, "Oh, this is how we have to do it." So I think I wanted to make sure that I didn't just ramble on and on about, "Well, this was my past and this is how I expect everybody to have it." So, but yeah, I think coaches love to talk about themselves. That's for sure.
Well, and we need an outlet. We need an outlet for more Division III coaches. Everybody's invited to talk. Everybody's got a story. Coach, I want to take a minute, say thank you very much for taking the time. I'm glad that we could finally, our schedules finally could link up. I know this is kind of that awkward time where finals are getting ready to start up and then everybody goes out the door and you get your month of quiet before it all tones back up. So I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us. For those of you that are sticking around, I have a feeling we're doing overtime this week. I, in fact, got yelled at by the co-host of Overtime because I may have put my foot in my mouth last week. So we're going to see what she has to say about that, amongst the other things that are going on in college football. But this has been Coach Mike, and I want to make sure I get it right, Gutelius.
That's right.
Instead of Cornelius.
Great job.
Not Cornelius.
No. Yeah.
And we will be, I want to say again, thank you very much. And we'll be right back, Chuckleheads.
In a small corner of the nation's capital lives a football tradition unlike any other.
Give me some juice! Come on now, cut it back on me! Ready, begin! B-A-O-D-A!
Grounded in faith and with a vision for the future. We are Cardinals. We are Catholic University.
Cardinals 3! 1, 2, 3, goes!
What's going on, Chuckleheads? Welcome to Overtime with Serenity Brown. That's Serenity Brown. I am Carlo Guadagnino. It's been a while since we have graced you. Well, since you've graced us with your presence,
yeah, since I've been gone, he wants to talk a whole lot of...
Smack.
This is a family channel, and I can't be cussing.
I maybe was just trying, with you editing the show, I was maybe trying to bait you into coming back on it. We haven't seen you since Mike D, the referee.
Yeah, it's been I've had a few weeks, okay?
All right. Well, you're back. You want to know what you missed while you were gone?
I mean, I watched the shows.
Oh, you missed some things in Division 3.
Okay.
So, first off, the draft just happened. So I want to say congratulations to all the guys. I believe there's five guys that were signed immediately after the draft. There's a handful of guys that have been invited to rookie mini camps, which gives them the opportunity to either get on a practice squad or get on the main roster. So congratulations to them and good luck to them since they're getting to live out the dream. We want to say thank you to Lebanon Valley and Ursinus. These will be the first two pieces of the new backdrop that's coming. We're just going to start adding things behind me, the teams that we've had. So we want to say thank you. And, we also got the schedule for Ursinus, which is kind of nice. It's nice to know when they're going to be playing. So I want to get that out of the way. Those are the first two things. You obviously knew that they gave us that stuff. And there was other stuff too, but those two pieces will be added to our backdrop. And then the PAC becoming the Pac-12 now, well, not now, a year from now. Hiram going to join the PAC. It's going to make 12 schools, which means that, in my opinion, we're going to see the PAC break into a north and a south. You'll have 6 schools on this side, 6 schools on that side. Week 11 will be a conference championship game. That's going to open the door for at least 2 games a year that are non-conference. So that'll help the likes of Grove City, Carnegie Mellon, Case Western, W&J, those teams that are in or that compete yearly. Westminster is going to be in that boat. They're going to be able to schedule some games outside of the conference, which they haven't been able to do for a couple years. So you missed that. You are caught up that the playoffs have been expanded to 40, 18 iPads on the sideline. A little interesting on that one. The 18 iPads on the sideline, from the coaches I've talked to and the people that are involved in how this is going to work, you and I have had that conversation. You kind of fall on the half of the schools that are a little hesitant with this, of how do we sell the idea of having to spend more money for iPads and cameras, and you're going to have to hire. We talked to a couple coaches that said, we're actively looking. They're going to have to hire people to do this. This isn't just the guy that got hurt. It's going to go stand up in the booth and film. And,
how is it going to affect schools that aren't fortunate enough to have
in Division 3
accessibility to do this?
In the Division 3 world, in the college world, not even from a sports standpoint, we have lost a handful of Division 3 schools. There's kids that at the end of this, probably this week or next week, right? We're in that final time period. Yeah. As soon as their finals are done, that graduating class is it. That school doesn't.
I think a few schools already are done. Like last week was their last.
So you know what I mean. So there's some things here. I do like the idea. I think that's awesome that that we're gonna involve this technology, and I hope that we are gonna use it the right way. But it seems, especially in the Division 3 ranks, it seems that there's a definite split. Some teams might use it, some teams might not use it. I think the realistic
those teams who do use it, are they going to be more at an advantage?
I think the realistic look is the NCAA has to say, well, if you're playing a team that's not using it,
are you allowed to use
it goes to the headset thing. Same thing. If one headset goes out, they don't use headsets anymore. So a lot of things going on. We're getting closer and closer to the greatest time of the year. I know, you're so excited. Football. I want to thank...
When I lose my TV.
That's not true. only for a few hours on Saturdays, Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the occasional Friday afternoon. You got Monday and Wednesday in there. And you got all morning Sunday. And all morning Saturday if you you work. I'm sorry. With that being said, I want to thank the Catholic University and Coach Gutelius. And we'll see you next week, Chuckleheads. It's a pretty easy one, huh? In and out, wham bam. We'll see you next week. Chicken and ham, I like it. Give it up here. Come on for it. I like it.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.